Welcome to our deep dive on audible thoughts. I'll be guiding us today, and we're jumping right into something pretty wild.
Yeah, glad to be here. This is a really fascinating concept to break down.
It really is. I
Eh,
mean, we usually picture our minds as these like completely sealed, soundproof rooms, right?
mhm.
You can think whatever you want in there, a brilliant idea, a deep insecurity, a wild ambition.
Right, totally private.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The assumption is that those thoughts just bounce around the walls of your own skull. But today, we're exploring a pretty radical premise. Like, what if that room isn't soundproof at all?
Wow. Yeah.
What if your thoughts are actually a form of palpable energy? Imagine them like radio waves or audible frequencies that are constantly vibrating, broadcasting outward, and quite literally shaping the physical reality around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a premise that completely upends how we understand our own internal monologue. If thoughts carry actual physical weight, it means you're not just, a passive observer moving through the world.
Right.
You're actually the active broadcasting station. You're transmitting the exact frequency that creates your reality.
So to help us understand exactly how this works, our guide today is a really unique source. We're analyzing a 21st century modernized Hindi translation of an absolute titan in the self-reliance space. It's Practical Steps to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Right. Yeah.
And this specific edition was translated by Dr. Sudhir Dixit and edited by Joe Kryanak.
And, looking at this classic text through the lens of a modernized Hindi translation is incredibly revealing.
How's that?
Well, it kind of strips away some of that early 20th century American context, right? It proves that the underlying mechanisms being described aren't bound by a specific era or like a specific culture. The source treats the human mind like a universal physics equation for achievement.
That makes total sense. And our mission today is to help you, the listener, break down the exact step-by-step mechanics of that equation. We're going to examine how abstract, invisible ideas, those fleeting, silent thoughts in your head, are transformed into concrete, physical wealth and success. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
If our thoughts are indeed broadcasting a frequency, I guess the very first challenge is figuring out how to tune the dial.
Yeah.
Because if thoughts are active energy, they can't just be scattered in 1,000 directions.
No, not at all. They require a laser-focused direction to do any heavy lifting in the real world.
Right, and the source calls this a definite purpose. And to illustrate how palpable this purpose can be, the text gives us the story of Edwin C. Barnes.
Well, Barnes is the perfect mechanical demonstration of this concept. When we first meet him in the text, his physical reality is it's incredibly bleak. He looks like a tramp, he's completely broke, and he has zero connections to power or wealth.
He doesn't even know Thomas Edison.
Right.
Yet his thought, his internal frequency, was entirely definite. He didn't just want a job sweeping floors for Edison to make a few bucks. His definite purpose was to become Thomas Edison's actual business partner.
Which is crazy to think about.
It is. He was broadcasting this desire so intensely that he literally snuck onto a freight train because he couldn't afford a passenger ticket just to get to Edison's laboratory in New Jersey.
And put yourself in Edison's shoes for a moment. You're one of the most famous, heavily guarded inventors in the world.
Oh, for sure.
A disheveled guy who just hopped off a dirty freight train, walks into your laboratory, and announces he's here to be your business partner. I mean, the logical, physical reality says this man should be thrown out immediately.
But he wasn't. Edison later noted that Barnes had a very specific look about him. It was a look that said he was ready to stake his entire future on this single desire. Edison felt the frequency.
Yeah.
So he gave him a menial floor-sweeping job just to keep him around. And years later, when Edison invented the Edison dictating machine, his own sales force thought it was a dud.
Nobody wanted to sell it.
Right. But Barnes saw the opportunity. He became the only person who could successfully sell it, which eventually led to a massive national slogan made by Edison and installed by Barnes. He actually manifested the partnership.
What's fascinating here is the text's assertion that the physical appearance of Barnes, the ragged clothes, the empty pockets, it carried zero actual weight in the equation.
Wow, yeah.
The definite purpose was the only active energy. His unwavering thought operated as like a gravitational pull. It slowly but surely aligned the physical world. Edison's perception, the opportunity of the dictating machine, the sales, all of it, to match his internal frequency.
But pouring all your energy into a definite purpose doesn't guarantee a smooth ride, does it?
Definitely not.
Because what happens when you broadcast that frequency, you take massive action and you quite literally hit a wall of dirt. The text addresses this exact failure point with the story of R.U. Darby.
Oh, the gold mine story.
Yeah. Darby and his uncle catch gold fever. They go out, start digging, and against all odds, they actually strike a rich gold vein. They invest in heavy machinery, they're pulling up a fortune, and then the vein just, well, it vanishes. The gold stops.
And this is where the concept of the broadcast frequency faces its mechanical stress test.
Exactly. And their frequency completely collapses. They keep digging for a little while, but eventually they just quit.
They give up.
Yeah, they sell all their expensive machinery to a local junkman for a few $100s and just take the train home. But the junkman does something critical. He doesn't just start blindly digging. He hires an engineer who understands geology, specifically how fault lines work.
Right, the science of it.
The engineer calculates that the gold didn't disappear. The earth had simply shifted. He discovers the massive, ongoing vein of gold was exactly 3 feet from where Darby had stopped digging. Just 3 feet.
It's a staggering tragedy. But the source uses this to explain the precise mechanism of failure. Failure acts as a psychological filter.
Okay, how so?
It tests whether your frequency is built on a temporary fragile wish or a permanent unbreakable conviction. Temporary defeat is mathematically guaranteed in any massive endeavor. The text argues that persistence isn't just a nice character trait. It's the fundamental insurance policy you must hold against that psychological filter.
Darby eventually learned this, though, and it's a fascinating pivot. He learned the mechanics of persistence, not from a business mogul, but from a sharecropper's little girl.
Oh, this is a great story.
Yeah, Darby is visiting his uncle's mill, and this little girl walks in demanding 50 cents for her mother. The uncle is furious. He screams at her to leave. He even grabs a wooden stave and marches toward her like he's going to physically attack her.
Terrifying.
Most adults would have run, but this child doesn't move a single inch. She just stares down this towering, furious man and screams right back, "My mother needs that 50 cents." The uncle's frequency breaks. He drops the stick and pays her.
She held her ground because her internal thought securing the 50 cents was absolute. She completely refused to accept no as a reality. Darby watched that interaction and realized his fundamental error. He had allowed the dirt to change his mind about the gold mine, but this little girl didn't allow a physical threat to change her mind about the 50 cents.
Let me push back on this for a second, though. I mean, it makes for a great story, but translating this to the real world feels a little dangerous. How do you know if you are 3 feet from gold, or if you are just digging a useless, completely empty hole in the ground? Isn't pushing forward blindly just a recipe for financial and emotional ruin?
That raises an important question, and it's a vital distinction in the text. Persistence isn't about blind, stubborn delusion.
Okay.
It's about holding your internal goal so steady that temporary physical setbacks don't overwrite your ultimate purpose. Darby didn't go back and dig the same empty hole.
Right. He shifted gears.
Exactly. He used the agonizing realization that he quit 3 feet from gold as new fuel. He transitioned into the life insurance business and became $1 million salesman precisely because he remembered that empty hole. He made a conscious decision that he would never accept no from a prospective client ever again. The persistence was recalibrated by what the text calls a burning desire.
Burning desire. That's the mechanism that powers the persistence. Because to keep asking when 100 people say no, a casual preference just won't cut it.
Not at all.
The source emphasizes that this requires an immense, very specific type of fuel. And to prove how powerful this burning desire is, the author shares a deeply personal, almost unbelievable story about his own son.
It is arguably the most profound evidence presented in the book. The author's child was born without ears. The attending doctors gave a definitive medical prognosis, saying the boy would be completely deaf and mute for his entire life. Biologically, the hardware simply wasn't there.
But the author looked at that biological reality and silently refused to accept it. He had decided his son was going to hear and speak.
He rejected the physical facts.
Completely. He began planting this burning desire to hear inside the boy's mind from a very early age through bedtime stories. He actively reframed the physical disability as a massive, unique advantage.
Right. He convinced the boy that people would treat him with extra kindness and that this difference would open doors for him that were closed to others.
And notice the mechanics there. He wasn't just hoping for a medical miracle. He was deliberately broadcasting his own definite purpose into the child's psychological architecture. He made sure the boy's mind never adopted the word impossible.
And the physical payoff is astounding. One day, the boy is near a record player and instinctively bites down on the edge of the wooden casing. Because the vibrations traveled through his teeth and jawbone, he discovered bone conduction.
Wow.
He could suddenly hear the music. That single loophole changed his entire trajectory. Later in life, an experimental hearing aid gave him something close to normal hearing. But because that burning desire had been his operating system for decades, he didn't stop at his own convenience.
No, he kept going.
Yeah, he took that burning desire straight to the hearing aid manufacturer and engineered a massive plan to help thousands of other deaf people access the same technology.
This narrative is the absolute embodiment of the text's core philosophy. Faith and desire actively eliminate the word impossible from the brain's vocabulary. The author argues that every adversity, without exception, carries the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit.
Yeah, the lack of ears wasn't an endpoint. It was the precise mechanism that forced the boy to find a different path, eventually allowing him to impact thousands of lives.
We see that same mechanism with Henry Ford in the text. Ford decides he wants an engine with 8 cylinders cast in a single solid block, the legendary V8. His top engineers look at the blueprints and tell him, "Mr. Ford, this is flat out impossible. The casting process won't allow it."
And what does Ford say?
His response is simply, "Produce it anyway, stay on it." They fight him on it for a year, and then, as if by magic, the impossible secret is unlocked. They figure out the single block cast.
And Ford himself wasn't an engineer capable of designing that casting process. But his burning desire served as the immovable force that compelled the minds of his engineers to keep searching until they found the solution.
So we have to pause here because this can sound deeply mystical. Does having a burning desire literally alter the laws of physics? Or does it operate differently? Does the intense obsession just force you to spot the mechanical loopholes like biting a record player or trying 1,000 different heat temperatures for a casting mold that everyone else just filters out?
It is the latter, though the results are so dramatic they appear mystical. The text explains that intense emotion and burning desire reprogram how your mind filters reality.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, when you eliminate impossible as an option, your brain stops looking for excuses to quit. It's forced to see the hidden pathways, the overlooked mechanisms, and the subtle loopholes. The laws of nature remain the same, but your cognitive ability to navigate those laws operates at an entirely different superhuman capacity.
Okay, if we accept that a burning desire changes how we filter reality, how do we systematically install that program? How does the invisible thought transition into a physical V8 engine or a thriving business? The source argues this translation happens exclusively through the subconscious mind, but the subconscious is incredibly stubborn. It only responds to a very specific programming language.
The source offers a brilliant mechanical analogy here. It compares the subconscious mind to a remarkably fertile plot of garden soil.
I love this analogy.
It's great, right? The soil has no moral preference. It doesn't care if you plant a beautiful oak tree or a poisonous weed. If you do not deliberately, consciously plant the seeds of your definite purpose, the weeds of fear, poverty, and doubt will naturally take root simply because they're constantly blowing around us in the environment.
So to plant the exact seeds you want, you have to use a technique called autosuggestion. But here is the critical catch. Just repeating words out loud is completely useless. You can't just stand in front of your bathroom mirror reciting, "I am wealthy," while feeling absolutely nothing.
No, that does nothing.
The subconscious only recognizes and acts upon thoughts that are saturated with extreme emotion or absolute faith.
Emotion is the catalyst. A thought without emotion is completely inert. It holds zero broadcasting power.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Is autosuggestion essentially just hacking your own mental software? Like it's trying to program your mind with plain, emotionless words, the equivalent of typing your password into a computer but never actually hitting the enter key. The machine just stares at you.
That is a phenomenal way to understand it. The emotion is the enter key. Without the emotional charge, the command just sits there on the screen, completely unrecognized by the operating system. And we see this clearly in the text with the story of Dr. Gonzalez.
Oh, right, the preacher.
Yeah, he was a preacher who decided he needed exactly $1 million to build a new, practical kind of college. For 2 agonizing years, he paced his room. He worried, he hoped, he desperately wished for this money. And for 2 years, nothing happened.
Because 2 years of pacing and wishing is just typing words without hitting enter. It doesn't carry the emotional frequency required to execute the program.
Precisely. The shift only happened when he reached a psychological breaking point. He made a definitive, emotionally charged decision. He said, "I am going to get this $1 million within 1 week."
The emotion was finally there.
Yes.
He then preaches a wildly passionate sermon titled, "What I Would Do If I Had $1,000,000." He paints this vivid, highly imaginative, emotionally charged picture of the plan. And a man sitting in the audience is so struck by the frequency of that vision that he walks up to the pulpit afterward and says, "I'll give you the $1,000,000. Gonzalez had the money in his hands within 36 hours.
2 years of wishing versus 36 hours of emotionally charged purpose. It is autosuggestion manifesting in real time. And the text provides another incredible mechanical example of this with Asa Candler.
Right, the Coca-Cola guy.
Yeah, he was a simple drugstore clerk who bought a secret syrup formula from a doctor. The formula itself was just liquid. But Candler mixed that physical liquid with one invisible, highly emotional ingredient, imagination. And through that, he built the global empire of Coca-Cola.
Let's look at the mechanics of that, though.
Yeah.
How does imagination actually build a company out of sugar water? The outline of the source suggests that the formula was useless on its own. Candler's imagination wasn't just daydreaming. It was the mechanism he used to see a massive global distribution plan.
Exactly.
Where the doctor just saw a single drink to sell in one pharmacy, Candler's emotional drive allowed his subconscious to generate the marketing, the branding, and the scale necessary to make it an empire.
Mm.
The imagination created the blueprint.
The thought generated the actionable plan. But there's a vital warning attached to this mechanism. The subconscious system does not discriminate.
Meaning what exactly?
Negative emotions act as an enter key just as efficiently as positive ones. The mind will materialize thoughts of poverty, anxiety, and fear with the exact same ruthless efficiency that it materializes thoughts of wealth and success. This is why mastering your emotional output, ruthlessly pulling those weeds, is absolutely non-negotiable.
Wow, okay, so let's say you've mastered this. You've hacked the software. You've used emotional auto-suggestion to program your subconscious with a burning desire. But eventually you hit a biological ceiling. There is a physical limit to what one single human brain can process, organize, and achieve. To reach truly astronomical levels of success, the source argues you have to connect your frequency to other minds.
Which brings us to one of the most famous, enduring concepts from this entire body of work, the mastermind.
The mastermind. It sounds like something out of a comic book, but it's actually the structural secret of the ultra-successful.
The source defines the mastermind mathematically. It is the harmonious coordination of two or more minds working toward a definite purpose. When two minds come together in absolute, frictionless harmony, they create a third, invisible, intangible force.
It's like networking computers together to create a superprocessor. The text gives us massive historical examples. Andrew Carnegie used a mastermind group of specialized executives to build the American steel industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Franklin D. Roosevelt relied on his famous brain trust to navigate the United States through World War II. Even looking at modern business, Andy Grove's highly collaborative, debate-driven management style at Intel is a perfect, practical application of the mastermind principle. You combine brain power to transcend the limits of the individual.
But the author of our source text took this mastermind concept to an entirely different, almost surreal level in his own life.
Yes, he did. This is arguably the most mind-bending part of the entire deep dive. The author realized he needed to fundamentally rebuild his own character. So every single night, right before going to sleep, he held imaginary, highly structured meetings in his mind. He called them his invisible counselors.
Just incredible.
He created a mental boardroom and invited historical titans to sit at the table. We were talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Edison, Charles Darwin, and Henry Ford.
He wasn't just passively daydreaming before bed. He was using these historical figures as precise psychological archetypes. He would actively ask Darwin for an understanding of the laws of nature. He would turn to Lincoln and demand a sense of justice and unfailing courage. He was trying to absorb their dominant frequencies.
But the visualization got so intense, so hyper-realistic, that the characters started acting independently. They would argue with each other. The author describes a specific night where the imaginary Abraham Lincoln actually stepped forward, completely out of character, to warn him about a coming world crisis.
Which is terrifying if you think about it.
It is. The experience became so incredibly visceral that the author was genuinely terrified he was losing his grip on reality. He literally stopped the practice for months because it felt way too real.
To ground this profoundly strange experience, the text actually ties it to the contemporary science of its era. It extensively cites Dr. J.B. Ryan's famous experiments at Duke University on telepathy and extrasensory perception.
Right, Dr. Ryan was running thousands of laboratory trials at a major university, trying to scientifically prove that the human brain wasn't just an isolated closed circuit.
The source relies on that research to suggest that the brain is a literal broadcasting and receiving station for etheric thought waves. It theorizes that in these deeply relaxed, highly emotional states, the author wasn't just imagining these historical men. His brain was tuning into the residual frequencies of their knowledge left behind in the ether.
Wait, stop right there. Are we talking about literal magical telepathy here? Like, is the author actually picking up Thomas Edison's literal thoughts floating around the atmosphere like a radio station? Or is this an incredibly advanced, brilliant psychological trick to access the absolute deepest, most analytical limits of his own subconscious mind?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction almost ceases to matter. Whether you believe the brain is a literal radio receiver picking up external frequencies from the ether, or you believe that the human subconscious is simply vastly more powerful at synthesizing information than we consciously realize, the practical result is identical.
The result being that you get access to profound answers and strategic blueprints you didn't consciously know you possessed.
Precisely. The source refers to this access point as your second self, the unseen creative self. This second self is exponentially more capable than the physical self you look at in the mirror every morning. High-frequency, emotionally charged thoughts act as a tuning dial. They raise your brain's vibratory rate until your sixth sense activates, allowing you to receive flashes of insight and direct inspiration from what the author calls infinite intelligence.
It's like overclocking your internal processor by feeding it pure emotional energy, clearing out the static, and allowing it to connect to a massive, universal cloud server of human knowledge.
And crucially, that connection only functions when the static of fear, doubt, and negative emotion is cleared away by the sheer force of a definite purpose and a burning desire.
This is a tremendous amount of architecture to process, but it is deeply empowering. If we trace the mechanical journey the source has taken us on, the blueprint for success is actually very rigid and clear.
It's a deliberate, engineered process, not just an accident of fate.
Absolutely everything, every company built, every fortune made, every physical innovation ever created by a human starts as an audible thought with a definite purpose.
Yeah.
That purpose has to be fueled not by a casual wish, but by a burning desire that completely refuses to acknowledge the word impossible.
Right.
That desire is then explicitly programmed into your subconscious mind through emotional autosuggestion, hitting that enter key with real feeling. And ultimately, that individual power is amplified exponentially by connecting with a mastermind, harmonizing your frequency with others to access a higher intelligence.
The ultimate mechanical takeaway here is agency. You are the absolute master of your earthly fate. Not because of luck, not because of circumstance, but solely because you are the only entity who controls the specific thoughts and emotions you choose to hold in your mind.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about how thoughts are palpable energy. We've explored the mechanics of tuning your dial to broadcast your definite desires to the universe, ignoring failure, and aligning the physical world to your internal frequency.
This raises an important question, and it's the exact mechanical reality I want to leave you pondering today. If this source material is accurate, and your brain is a literal broadcasting station, constantly transmitting your dominant thoughts into the ether 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, what exact frequency are you forcing the people around you to listen to right now?